Morning.
I'm assuming I need to leave my mask on when I'm talking. Sure. I need to leave my mask on when I'm talking. I like this.
So what's going on here is, right, wrong, or indifferent, two of our channels which go up to the booth are under here, and we tend to not put anything on there except for
This mic.
this
the pulpit
mic, right, the pulpit mic. And the others are here. Now you might say, is that the best place? I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm just saying this is how it was installed. So we got one and two, and then we got the rest of them. Now it's labeled 3, 4, 5, 6, and then it's not labeled the 36. It says so basically every mic type that. Okay. And so all I upstairs or anybody upstairs really needs to know is which one of these are we plugging our mic into so I can set them up.
Because there are sliders, that one hand has sliders for correct to each of the different channels.
So right now, what we have is we have these cables, but we're just going to need to plug them into our mic. And some of them are labeled, some of them are not. We don't know which one is which because we set it up. What we're going to have, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to mute it. Because if we plug in the mic, the system's off like it is now, you're going to hear a loud say, oh, yeah, hold on one second. Right, go mute it, and then we
They all say three. Here's one kind of runs by itself. Oh, yeah, okay, that one's going the other way. Okay. That's going over to, that's a, that's a. We have a couple plans.
I think we're still getting successfully.
Slick. We're live there. Okay, good. As long as you got one mic working somewhere, you're probably good.
It's still good, so.
As long as you got one mic. Oh, yeah. good?
Good morning. Thank you for joining us. It's a different day. I am Ann Harrington. I am a member of the Board of Trustees. Welcome to our service. Unitarian Universalism encourages an open-ended search for meaning in life and a commitment to asking our values to shape our actions. We are a pluralistic religion that draws wisdom from many sources. We welcome all people into our beloved community of whatever age, race, class, ethnicity, physical ability, sexual orientation, gender identity, or religious background. We especially welcome those of you who may be with us for the first time, and thank you to those who are staying with us online. Guests are welcome to participate in any activities in the community. Our welcome team members are wearing green name badges and are ready to answer any questions you may have if you are a visitor or new to the congregation. Pastoral care team members are wearing yellow name badges and are able to talk with you in the event you have a life transition and need assistance. We are not having coffee hour today. As you've heard, or maybe not, we have a little uptick in some COVID positive cases. So we have decided on it to err on caution and not do coffee hour. We would ask that you could leave for just a moment to get a drink, and then we will rejoin in here to do a brief conversation just about some upcoming things. Thank you, and hopefully this will get back to what we were used to before. Welcome.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Gail Springer, and I am the lead for the Earth-Based Traditions team. And I'm here to talk to you about Witches' Ball, because, you know, it's summer now. But Witches' Ball, oh, I was just told to take my mask off. Is that better? Witches' Ball is going to be held. It's an annual event here, except for the last 2 years. Thank you, COVID. It's an annual event that is held here in the sanctuary. And this year it's going to be on October 21st. And what this is it's a celebration of basically Halloween, or Samhain, as we call it in Earth-Based Traditions, and the thinning between the worlds, and a celebration of our ancestors. So there will be food and no alcohol, but beverages. The food will be to purchase. The beverages will be for free. And there will be music, live music, and a little bit of dancing if you wish to. Lots of conversation. We will have a raffle as well. And we're also going to be selling a cookbook. And that's where I'm going to need your help. We are asking for everybody to submit at least 2 recipes and let us know what season they're good for. For example, chili, great for the winter. I have an excellent salad recipe that I'm going to put in for the summer. And so I will be sending out an announcement in the newsletter, but the best place to submit those is going to be, we've got a new email address for the Earth-Based team called earth@uucqc.org. So all of this will be in the newsletter. And then we're also going to be asking for donations for the Witches' Ball for some of the food to help offset the cost of the food. And I'll put that in the newsletter as well. And we won't need that until it gets closer, because it's food like potatoes, cabbages, onions, pumpkins for decorating, things like that. So those of you who do garden yourself, that's kind of what we're asking for, is if you could plant a few extra to help us out a little bit to offset the cost of food. So if anybody has any questions about Witches' Ball or about the Earth-Based Traditions group, please see me or send an email to earth, EARTH, @uucqc.org, and I'll be very happy to help you. So thank you for your time this morning.
A couple minor housekeeping issues. Just to be clear, the reason we are going with masking today is that we had a number of cases. We now have 11 known cases of members in the congregation who have contracted COVID in the last week or so. And we would ask anyone, if you know of anybody or if you have yourself tested positive, which we hope you don't, please let the office know. This will help us to then know during the next week or so what we should be doing to plan for next week, if we should continue as we are now, if we can step back from this protocol, or if we need to step up and maybe go all online. So please keep us informed of what's going on, and we'll try and keep you posted as well through the newsletter and through emails to you. So if you have any questions, please check those and we'll let you know. If you have any questions, feel free to call the office also during the weekday from 10 to 1 o'clock. Let me check here. Make sure I'm not missing something else. There is a meeting following the service today. This was going to be intended to be an informative conversation with you about where the congregation is as far as now that the pledge drive has pretty much wrapped up, where we are with that, as far as what that means as far as ministerial transition goes and other types of things. There will also be after congregation meetings the next 2 Sundays, the first 2 Sundays of May, to help discuss the things that will be coming up on the annual meeting agenda on the 21st of May. So please keep yourself availed of those as well. So if you can stay after today, please do so. And since there's no coffee hour, please feel free to take a short break after the service. Come immediately back, and we don't expect this to go more than 10 or 15 minutes unless you all want to ask things that we don't necessarily know about. So please, thank you for being here today. We will not be singing congregational hymns today, just as a precaution. and we'll be bringing our music back. Unfortunately, our music director, Gates Thomas, was one of the first people who came down with COVID, and he's laying up trying to get well also. Thank you very much, and thank you for being here, and thanks to you, though, online also for being with us today as well. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. Holy and beautiful the custom which brings us together in the presence of the Most High, to face our ideals, to remember our loved ones in absence, to give thanks, to make confession, to offer forgiveness, to be enlightened and to be strengthened. Through this quiet hour breathes the worship of ages, the cathedral music of history. 3 unseen guests attend, faith, hope, and love. Let all our hearts prepare them a place. Please join us in our unison chalice lighting as I light our chalice. Let us together say, we come together every week, bound not by a creed or a mutual desire to please one God or many gods, yet we are drawn together by a belief that how we are in the world, who we are together matters. We light this chalice together in the knowledge that love, not fear, can change this world. Let us join in our responsive reading, number 515. We lift our hearts with thanks. And please rise as you're willing and able in body or in spirit. We begin the reading. For the sun and the dawn, which we did not create, for food which we plant but cannot grow, for this gathered company which welcomes us as we are from wherever we have come, for all our free churches that keep us human and encourage us in our quest for beauty, truth, for all things which come to us as gifts of being from sources beyond ourselves, we lift up our hearts in thanks this day. And in this we greet the holy that is in our midst, and usually we do this by coming and greeting each other as closely as we can and embracing each other. I would invite you to approach each other and at most do elbow bumps and say hello to each other and take a moment to wave and say hi. Thank you very much.
Hi. So Patrick's going to talk about hope a little bit later. So I tried to find something on the UU page to deal with hope, and I found something called Hope and Imagination. And it talks about how if you have an acorn hopes to become an oak tree someday. And it takes a little imagination, some hard work, some care. You can't plant an acorn in the solid ground here and have it grow. That's just not going to work. There's got to be the right situations for it. And it was a very meaningful story, but it wasn't really meaningful to me. Because for me, the true meaning of hope, at least when I think of hope, it's the imagination part. Because if we can't imagine a better world, a better tomorrow, then we don't really have that hope. We don't have that foundation to hope upon. And whenever I go to imagination, I naturally go to comic books. So I was thinking about hope in the comic book world, because it's everywhere. Everybody knows, well, Superman's motto used to be truth, justice, and the American way. It's now changed to truth, justice, and a better tomorrow, which I feel gives him more of that symbol of hope. Even though he has like godlike powers, he doesn't care about greed or conquest. He strives to represent the inherent goodness of the human spirit, the capacity of every living thing to do right by their neighbors. And that, to me, is more hope. That is a better tomorrow, striving to be the best that we can be. And it also came out, Mark Waid, in 2004. Everybody says that the little S on his chest stands for Superman. Well, it's now canon, I'll explain later, about how the S is really the Kryptonian symbol for hope, because they want to make sure that they really let you know that Superman is a hopeful person. Superman is somebody that we can strive to be more like, that we can be hopeful, and he's hoping for a better tomorrow. Jeff Johns in 2007 decided that the Green Lantern wasn't enough. And if there's an entire color spectrum out there, well, why aren't there blue lanterns? Why aren't there red lanterns? Why aren't there yellow lanterns? And so he created different colored lanterns to work with different emotional states. So the Green Lanterns use willpower, but the Blue Lanterns work on hope. The Green Lanterns were kind of like space cops that go around and patrol all the systems and make sure that everything's okay. But the Blue Lanterns were not cops at all. They were more monks, more religious leaders, and they did all of their supernatural fighting by using the power of hope to create things that they thought would be hopeful. They would go into a battle and they would use their powers to kind of see what the situation needed. If there was a guy who was super angry, what did he need? They would use their constructs to kind of show him that there is hope in the world. There is hope out there, and if you know how to wield it, hope can be a very powerful tool. And their creed, which I really enjoy, is, "In fearful day, in raging night, with strong hearts full, our souls ignite. When all seems lost in the war of light, look to the stars, for hope shines bright." And quite honestly, I would much rather recite that instead of any scripture for my own motto of hope, for my own centering piece. We're going to switch gears here to Marvel now. That was all DC. In 2006, Brian Michael Bendis had to create an event called the House of M. It was editorially mandated, and in this, about 1 million mutants died. They lost their powers, some were in flight, but they're just lost 1 million mutants. So the population of this demographic dropped to roughly 215 people with powers. They were a minority. They've always been a minority in the world, and they've always had problems asserting themselves and getting equal rights that everybody else had. And now all of a sudden, they're just a lecture hall. There's not any of them there. A little bit later, in 2008, Mike Carey wrote a story about the next mutant born. Everybody has lost their powers, and now the next mutant was named Hope Summers. And Hope was what they were hoping for. It was their dreams. How can we get back? We've been decimated. How do we go on? This little child has all of our hopes. This little child is the future of our race, of everything. And they named it Hope. They named her Hope. And I was going back through all this, and my mind always wanders. And this all happened in 2006 and 2008. And I kind of said, well, what was going on in that time period? What was happening? And then I remembered there was a presidential election going on where somebody had a very famous and iconic poster of him running for president with a very simple word at the bottom. The artist was Shepard Fairey. You might remember it. It's the Obama picture, the Obama poster, where his slogan was simply hope. And I don't think any of these have anything to do with each other. I think they might, but they probably don't. Marvel and DC have always taken real-world events and tried to make sense of them in the ways that they do, in their imagination, in their comic book world. And they have always tried to tie hope into a lot of things that they do, to which I find a lot more palatable and easier to read than sometimes trying to figure out scripture. But I think it was really an interesting process that I took, hearing how much imagination goes into hope and how it really resonates for a lot of different people, not just creatively, but in the stories that they do like to tell. And I just want to leave you with a simple quote of, what is hope? Well, what is the best thing that you can imagine? And now if the children like to follow me downstairs, as long as it's not raining, we will eventually end up outside. And then Gates plays a do, 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 do.
Oh, oh yeah. The real world is always so much more interesting. We come together as a community from time to time to share those joys, concerns, milestones, those sorrows, those things which are a part of our lives. We bring forward all of our concerns for those who are suffering from various illnesses, whether it is testing positive for COVID or for having flu or colds or whatever else may be passing through. Our hopes and prayers for them and for all of you who may be joining us online. One of our children, Glennon, offers that he loves his mom and his hopes for his father. I'm sharing a joy of my own. In less than a month, I'm starting my online classes for a Master's of Social Work program through the University of Illinois online. Please pray for me that I can figure out how to do all the online part. It has been an interesting challenge so far. I think I'm registered. We'll see. Our hopes and prayers for all of those who may be suffering in some way and those who are in harm's way around the world, whether it is through natural disaster or human-made calamity. Do we have anything from online to be shared? Good. Good to hear that Dennis is getting better. Please join us in a moment in prayer here. Spirit of life, I find you in those humble places, the quiet still spaces where I am held in a greater love than myself. You are the wind in my breath, the fire in my soul, the subtle heartbeat of creation all around me. O Goddess God, your love is unimposing yet firm and steadfast, present to all those who would know your peace. You challenge me in my arrogance and move me to listen deeply when I fail, as I always do, to see the fuller picture. Spirit of love, you find the gentle words to speak life into me and hold me when all else around me and in me feels broken. You remind me that I am loved and saved just as I am. Your salvation is found in living life loved. Remind me of who I am, O Holy Mystery. Help me to see you in the small, everyday moments where you are found. Grant me the wisdom to listen for you and seek you in those unlikely places and unexpected spaces. Amen, and blessed be. We will take a moment in silence in meditation and afterwards light candles as you are willing and able. So be it. Our reading today is taken from excerpts from a text that is often referred to as the Five Smooth Stones of Liberal Religion by James Luther Adams, a mid-20th century to late 20th century theologian and social ethicist. Adams himself would not have called them that, but that's what they became known as. It comes from his essay, Guiding Principles for a Free Faith. In summation, these five smooth stones are like this. One is openness to new truth. Religious liberalism depends first on the principle that revelation is continuous, meaning has not been finally captured. Nothing is complete, and thus nothing is exempt from criticism. Our religious tradition is a living tradition because we are always learning. Secondly, freedom. All relations between persons ought ideally to rest on mutual free consent and not on coercion. We freely choose congregational relationship and spiritual practice. We deny infallibility and resist hierarchical authority. 3, justice. We are morally obligated to direct our effort toward the establishment of a just and loving community. It is this which makes the role of the prophet central and indispensable in liberalism. 4, and I find this one interesting because a lot of you don't get this one initially. Institution building. Religious liberals, quote, deny the immaculate conception of virtue and affirm the necessity of social incarnation. Basically, good things don't just happen. Justice is an exercise of just and lawful institutional power. Institution building involves the messiness of claiming our power amid conflicting perspectives and needs, rather than the purity of ahistorical, decontextualized ideals. And 5, hope. The resources, divine and human, that are available for the achievement of meaningful change justify an attitude of ultimate optimism. In exploring that fifth one a little deeper, hope, that idea of ultimate optimism, not immediate optimism, but ultimate, Adams says, finally, liberalism holds that the resources, divine and human, that are available for the achievement of meaningful change justify an attitude of ultimate optimism. He says this view does not necessarily involve immediate optimism. He says, in our century, meaning the 20th century, we have seen the rebarbarization of the masses. We have witnessed a widespread disillusion of values, and we have seen the appearance of great collective demonries. Now, just so you know, Adams himself spent time in Nazi Germany just before World War II and saw the horrors of it up close and personally. He says progress is now seen not to take place through inheritance. Each generation must anew win insight into the ambiguous nature of human existence and must give new relevance to moral and spiritual values. A realistic appraisal of our behavior, personal and institutional, and a life of continuing humility and renewal are demanded, for there are ever-present forces in us working for perversion and destruction. And I would say this points to the fact that even though Roe v. Wade was supposed to be settled law for so many years, we can never rest on our laurels, that there are those demonries, as he calls them, ever seeking to pervert and destroy. He goes on to say, still there is something in the genuine liberal perspective that, while recognizing this tragic nature of the human condition, continues to live with a dynamic hope, with the operative mood as one of its voices. It is a mood that derives ultimately from the ancient prophets and from the white heart of the New Testament. The affirmative answer of the prophetic religion, which may be heard in the very midst of the doom that threatens us like thunder, think of our days here, is that history is a struggle in dead earnest between justice and injustice. Looking towards the ultimate victory is the promise and the fulfillment of grace. Anyone who does not enter into that struggle with the affirmation of love and beauty misses the mark and thwarts creation as well as self-creation. So ends our reading. This congregation is a theologically diverse community with membership open to all who are in accordance with our principles, our mission, our vision, and values. We are a welcoming congregation to people of all sexual orientations and identities, and we unconditionally welcome any and all of you to our community of mutual caring and serious intent to grow as spiritual and moral beings. Our congregation is entirely self-governed by democratic processes. One of the privileges of our free church tradition is to provide all of the financial support for our many ministries from among ourselves. Generosity, therefore, is one of the spiritual values we recognize as central to our personal and institutional well-being. You are now invited to participate in the blessing of giving as the ushers come among you to accept the gifts of this congregation. Sharing may be made online as well, and our sharing of the undesignated plate this month goes to our Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations. Thank you. Thank you for your generosity now and always. As I was reflecting on this message today, I realized that one of the stories I refer back to was 20 years ago. Back in the summer of 2003, my wife and I, Jennifer, had gotten married, so our 20th wedding anniversary is coming up here in June. And as we were returning from our honeymoon, we stopped by a little town of Littleton, New Hampshire. Now, does anybody know what Littleton, New Hampshire is famous for? If you did, I would be surprised. We stayed at a historic inn across the street from the town library, and on the town's lawn is a life-size bronze statue of a young girl, smiling and arms flung wide in greeting. It's a depiction of the character Pollyanna, the young heroine in the books by Eleanor H. Porter, the town's famous resident. In her 1913 book, Pollyanna, Eleanor H. Porter tells the story of a young orphan, Pollyanna Whittier, who overcomes common but crucial obstacles in her life by means of her, quote, glad game. The game consists of finding something to be glad about in every situation. It is a type of reframing. Inscribed in a brooch given to Pollyanna by her deceased father is a caution from Abraham Lincoln that reads, "When you look for the bad in mankind, expecting to find it, you surely will." The novel's success brought the term Pollyanna, along with adjective Pollyannish and the noun Pollyannism, into the language to describe someone who is cheerfully optimistic and who always maintains a generous attitude towards the motive of other people. It also became, by extension, and contrary to the spirit of the book, a derogatory term for a naive optimist who always expects people to act decently despite strong evidence to the contrary. I think I can safely say that all of us have had our traumas and difficulties and problems in our lives, and often to the degree that we might not be sure how we're going to recover from them. Odds are that many of us here are in the midst of such even now. So what makes it possible for many, if not all people, to rebound and even to thrive, to have hope? What's the secret of being resilient, of being able to bounce back from the difficulties and traumas of life, the thousand natural shocks which flesh is heir to? Sociologist Sybil Wolin says that resilience embodies a paradox. We're talking about the capacity to rebound from experience mixed with all the damage and problems that adversity can cause. It's not an either-or thing, she says. Resilience is not about invulnerability or not being hurt or damaged by life's events. So in going back to the 5 smooth stones, we talk about hope. And Adams talks about hope and optimism together. But what is the difference, perhaps, between hope and optimism? And if you go online and do a search for hope versus optimism, you will get many, many, many things come up. And interestingly enough, some of them say exactly the opposite things. And what I find is that the people who deal with things like psychology, philosophy, and sort of human behavioral things generally come up with fairly consistent identities. Those who deal primarily in the self-help area and aren't quite as deeply grounded tend to come up with a variety of things that aren't necessarily connected, that are kind of a little more self-generated. So I've tended to try to stick to the ones that are a little more well-grounded. So for optimism, one of the things about it is optimism can be defined as being confident of the future or success of something. Optimism believes the future will be positive and having a positive outlook to life, irrespective of reality. And I'm not quite sure about that one. There are some others that say otherwise. What is optimism? Some sociologists see optimism as the individual's core belief that their future will have good, positive experiences and won't have bad or negative ones. This would be more in the negative Pollyannish kind of definition. More formally, optimism is defined as the degree to which the individual believes that positive outcomes will occur in the future rather than negative outcomes for themselves and also for others they know, the economy, the world in general, and so on. Social sociologists see an optimistic disposition as an important part of our personality, our natural makeup. Optimism affects how we approach all things in life, our work, our professional activities, our romantic relationships, and even our personal finances. That was one of the definitions I found. So what is hope? In contrast, it says, some of the definitions say things like, hope is a feeling that something wanted might happen. Hope is confined to the desires of the individual within the limits of reality. The late Professor C.R. Snyder, one of the central figures in hope research, defines hope this way. Quote, hope is a positive motivational state that is based on an interactively derived sense of success, agency, goal-directed energy, and B, pathways, planning to meet goals. To elaborate on these two separate aspects of hope, of agency and pathways, researchers tell us that hopeful people engage in more of something called pathway thinking, where they are able to come up with lots of different ways in which they can successfully reach a chosen goal. The agency thinking is the idea that hopeful people have greater motivation to use these pathways, to initiate, and then to continue with the actions that are needed to advance towards those goals. So seeing ways to get there and then motivation to actually go there. They go on and say, unlike optimism, which is a belief that things will be positive, hope is an ability to strive for excellence in the face of obstacles. Perhaps the most powerful effect hope has is felt when it's gone. When we lose hope, we decide that there's no chance that we'll get an outcome we want, we lose motivation. And for good reason. If there's no hope, why try? As leaders, understanding the nuance of hope and optimism can help us give our people confidence in us. It's unnerving to follow a leader who's blind to the odds. How many of us have seen that in our professional work? More than a few. You know the boss is saying, yeah, we're going to do it. And you're like, we are doomed, man. There's no way. If we're placed, it's unnerving to follow a leader who's blind to the odds. Great leaders, however, point out when the odds are against us, and when point out that there's hope to overcome them. And if I were to place a bet on one leader over another leader, I put my money on the one who knows the only way to win is by trying to be scrappy, because in the long run, that's where innovation and inspiration happens. I'm reminded of the St. Crispin's Day speech in Henry V, as my friends say, Hank V, the Shakespearean play, where, or for those of us who are Lord of the Rings geeks, the speech toward the end where Aragorn is talking to the small but mighty band. I see the fear that would take the very heart of me, but that's not today. You're talking about hope and optimism. Cornel West, who many of you may be aware of, says some of the following things in one of his master classes that he teaches. He says, I think it's very important to always draw a distinction between hope and optimism. Hope and optimism are two very, very different things. Hope is about making a leap beyond the evidence that is given to you. Optimism usually looks at the evidence and sees whether it's possible to infer that things are going to get better. So you see, hope is over against the evidence sometimes. How many of you are Cubs fans? No? Or Cardinals fans, or, baseball fans, sports fans of some sort. And your team is terrible. But you still have hope that they might pull it out this season. They just might. I mean, that's what a lot of great sports movies are about, is about that team where everybody writes them off because all the traditional logic says, oh, they're not going to make it, and there's no real optimism for them, but there's hope. You got to have hope. Got to have heart, Cornel West goes on to say, he said, optimism oftentimes, again, has to do with being a spectator. How do things look? How are things going down there? Is the evidence allowing us to lead us toward a conclusion that we ought to be optimistic? Whereas hope is in the mess, in the muck, in the mire, in the funk, and it helps create new evidence. Because when you are in the funk, in the mire, in the mess, your actions, your attitudes, your inspiration, your impact on others can create evidence. It can create change. So it's dynamic. It's forever changing because you are a participant. You're not a spectator. So that from the very beginning, hope is something that is very much deeper than optimism. And it's no accident that when that hope and despair go hand in hand. Hope is a wrestling with despair over and over again, but never allowing despair to have the last word, to dampen your fire, to sustain your hope, is your quest for truth, goodness, beauty, and maybe the holy. Simply put, the optimistic person believes that somehow, whether through luck and actions of others or one's own actions, that his or her future will be successful and fulfilling. The hopeful person, on the other hand, believes specifically in his or her own capacity for securing a successful and fulfilling future. So while optimism is a positive thought pattern, hope is the process of setting goals and following through on them. In our own Unitarian Universalist history, the Universalist founder of American Universalism, John Murray, preached a sermon often that could be called, "Give them not hell, but hope and courage." And in our Unitarian Universalist faith, we have many reasons to have hope and courage. We believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person. We believe in the interconnected web of all existence, that none are alone and all are a part of a larger whole. We reject the idea of hell and damnation and separation and believe that all have the same fate. We believe that grace is incremental in nature, in reality, and that everything we do counts. Revelation and truth are not closed, but constantly revealed. Hence, the sources, divine and human, that are available for the achievement of meaningful change justify an attitude of ultimate, but not necessarily immediate, hope and optimism. There is a hope in the ultimate abundance of the universe. And while I believe this saves us from the idea of being of all being in chaos, neither is it a blissful retreat from engagement and responsibility in the naive belief that everything will work out for the best. We do not believe in an optimism of "don't worry, be happy" is sufficient. Well, it's a great song. It's not necessarily a great philosophy. Just as courage is that which we exhibit in the face of fear, not in its absence, so true hope lives in the presence of despair, not in its absence. And I would say in this age, in this day in which we reside right now, we have reason for more hope than we have probably had in many, many long years because of all of the despair that is being thrown at us by so many who want us to despair, to surrender to them. We cannot give proof of or for something that is an ultimate, but we can look at things which at the least seem to point towards that. Hope is a matter of faith. Scholars tell us that hope is a belief in a positive outcome related to events and circumstances. Hope implies a certain amount of perseverance, believing that a positive outcome is possible even when there is some evidence to the contrary. Beyond the basic definition and usage of term, hope follows some basic patterns which distinguish its usage from related terms. Hopefulness is somewhat different from optimism in that hope is an emotional state, whereas optimism is a conclusion reached through deliberate thought patterns that lead to a positive attitude. But hope and optimism can both be based in unrealistic belief and fantasy. Hope is often the result of faith, in that while hope is an emotion, faith carries an inspired and informed type of positive belief. Hope is typically contrasted with despair, but despair may also refer to a crisis of faith. Hence, when used in a religious context, hope carries a connotation of being aware of spiritual truth. Hope is distinct from positive thinking, which refers to a therapeutic or systematic process used in psychology for reversing pessimism. The term false hope refers to a hope based entirely around a fantasy or an extremely unlikely outcome. Now, psychologists and doctors now agree that in general, those of us who live longest among our species are among those who tend to be more hopeful. They not only survive often tragic and harrowing situations, but seem to transcend them with creativity and grace. This is not about blind optimism. They go in the face of despair and adversity with a faith that is ultimately hopeful in nature of existence in general. In part, an implication of this type of finding is that an authentic hope, rooted in realistic understanding and experience of life, can actually save or increase our physical lives. Deeper than this issue of the quantity of life is the more pressing issue of the quality of our lives, individually and collectively. Despair is the necessary precursor of the successful oppression of a person or an entire people. Remove hope, and we remove resistance to those who would control us. This is something we see abounding more and more in our world. Through our hope, we are ultimately saved from despair and from nihilism. Now, nihilism is a word that some of us haven't heard since college philosophy. It's a $5 word for a belief in meaninglessness of existence. A consequence of this perceived meaninglessness is a conviction that it is necessary to utterly destroy existing patterns of relationship and society in order to level the field and start over again, recreating reality in some other image, usually that of some leader. This is the basic self-justifying philosophy of totalitarian systems like Leninism, Marxism, fascism, the Khmer Rouge, the Taliban, all of which killed thousands and millions of people in the name of imposing a new order on chaos, meaning on apparent meaninglessness. As religious liberals, we reject nihilism and its implications. As James Luther Adams writes, history has a meaning and a demanded direction. This is the issue that cuts through all others, he says. It cuts through the ranks of those who believe in God as well as through the ranks of unbelievers. For us as religious liberals, existence is ultimately meaningful and hopeful, not meaningless and despairing. The implications are not just part of a realm of a larger scale socio-political dynamics, but are intimate and personal. In my undergraduate years at the University of Missouri, I had one of those crises that many undergraduates have. I couldn't seem to figure out what it is I wanted to do with my life. My original career goal of something in journalism had fallen away due to a change in interest and insufficient grades. I was already on track to get a bachelor's degree in political science, but what then? I thought about law, possibly. I went to interview with the pre-law advisor, a man named Dr. Theodore Tarko, or Ted Tarko as he was known. Dr. Tarko was already a known commodity to me because I had taken 2 of my courses in Greek and Roman history and civilization from him. And he was something of a genius, heading up both the Honors College and later as dean of the massive Department of Arts and Sciences. He had a way of cutting through to the quick in a situation with pithy and memorable phrases loaded with meaning. One day, one of those I found terribly helpful was an understanding of the constancy of human fallibility, captured in the statement that even the Greeks made junk. Now, as I sought my future, he was again to offer me no less. Very honestly, Dr. Tarko made it politely clear that my grades were, let us say, insufficient to the rigors of a law school admission. I must have seemed very disappointed because he took several minutes to observe me and inquire after other options. In closing our interview, he remarked that he remembered me from his classes and that I had an obvious interest and aptitude for history and classics. He said that given this, that I should remember that, quote, there is always hope for those who love truth and beauty. There is always hope for those who love truth and beauty. Over the intervening years, this phrase and its implications have given me more solace and encouragement and guidance than I probably realized myself. It is a profound statement of hope. I also find it remarkably similar to James Adams's statement that anyone who does not enter into that struggle for justice with the affirmation of love and beauty misses the mark and thwarts creation as well as self-creation. It is the possibilities for creation and recreation which is hopeful, a hopeful understanding of existence offered to us. Without them, we are trapped in a reality in which change is not possible, decay is inevitable, and meaningless and despair become overwhelming. For us as Unitarian Universalists, hope is not naive wish fulfillment, but an honest hope based on a deep faith that we are inherently unique and worthy beings, that we are not alone, and that the universe ultimately has meaning. Faith is not based on proof, but on those things we know to be true in the absence of proof. Therefore, I cannot give you proof for having hope, only that we do, and we must have it. It is often in our darkest moments when we reach out in faith and hope that there is someone or something beyond ourselves which can help us even in our despair. No matter what we understand the source of this grace to be, whether it is God as God or the Spirit of life or the ground of being or the power of human community, the implications are basically the same. There is hope, and we are not alone. Even in the darkness, we can claim for ourselves that hope which is our birthright as co-creators and participants in this sacred and holy reality. As Unitarian Universalists, our faith and hope is not a naive belief that we will kick back and take it easy and that the God of the universe will take care of it and balance our checkbook, if only. Rather, it is an understanding that we are co-creators with all that is and co-revealers of that mystery which we are heirs to. In seeking greater awareness of each moment as we take our lives one step at a time, we are empowered to be fuller co-creators with all that is by embracing the holy in the incremental nature of our lives. We are graced with the knowledge that hope is always available to us, that the future is not sealed from us, and that every step that we take, that everything we do, ultimately counts. Resiliency Resiliency is aided by a belief in ultimate goodness of life and that the trauma we are experiencing is passing and temporary. As religious liberals, we recognize and affirm that while pain and death are inevitable, that life itself is dependable. It is offered that we should carry 2 verses of Scripture in our coat pockets. In one pocket, the verse that says, "From dust you have come, and to dust you shall return." And in the other pocket, the Scripture which reads, "Yours is the earth and everything in it." People who successfully transcend difficulties tend to have the ability to recruit others into their systems of support. The point is that we don't do this alone. This is the purpose for our communities, why those of us who are here together are, those who are here with us online, and those who will be with us in the future, and those who have been with us in the past, come together to form communities of hope and resilience. As Unitarian Universalists, we offer in our principles and other statements of faith many of these same ideas and qualities which researchers are finding in resilience and hope and optimism. We affirm and support the acceptance of one another and of self-knowledge and spiritual growth. We embrace the fundamentally hopeful quality of the universe and are open to the forces which create and uphold life, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. We recognize and respect that we are all connected, that we are all ultimately not alone in the interconnected web of all existence, of which we are a part. And as a religious community, we stand for justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. As John Murray said, "Give them not hell, but hope and courage." No matter what we understand the source of all of this grace that is ours to be, whether it is Goddess God or the Spirit of life, or the ground of being, or the power of human community, the implications are the same, that there is hope, that we are not alone, that even in the greatest darkness we can claim for ourselves the light of that hope, which is our birthright as co-creators and participants together in this sacred and holy existence, which is ours and the world's together. Amen, and blessed be. I would invite you in a moment here to stand together so that we may say the extinguishing of our chalice and send our light into the world. I would invite you to rise as you're willing and able in body and spirit and join in the extinguishing of our chalice and send its light to the world so that the world may know this light. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Within each of our hearts there is a most glorious light. Go forth and let its spark help you understand what troubles both you and others. Go forth and let its light of reason be a guide in your decisions. Go forth and bring its rays of hope to those in need of help in both body and spirit, that they may find healing. Go forth and fan the flames of passion to help heal our world. Go forth and spread the warm glow of love, pushing back the darkness of the world. Go forth and share your glorious light with this world. May the Eternal bless you and protect you. May the Eternal smile on you and favor you. May the Eternal befriend you and prosper you and all people always. Amen. And blessed be. So be it. Our service is ended. I invite you to take a few moments for yourselves and seek comfort, and then come back and we will have a brief conversation about where we are with things in the congregation as we move forward in this transition.
Your sermon with so many more people. Yeah.
Thank you.
What?
Thank you.
It hit. Some things that you're gonna be encountering. I kept thinking of hopelessness and helplessness as these underlying. I'm gonna go to question.
It is.
I mean, it underlies serotonin.
Oh, yeah.
The commercials say serotonin tells you blah, blah, blah.
Trust me.
It's the hopelessness.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The core. And
Despair.
this is good that we can do this. You know, somebody did a study of survivors of Golden Gate Bridge suicide.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
What were you thinking? Very few people were.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's romantic, but it's rocky and it's rugged waters.
It's like hitting cement. Yeah. Yeah.
What were you thinking as you were getting? And I dreamed about that. There's still that hope. There was that glimmer of hope somewhere.
Right.
And ambivalency that, yeah, it's.
Well, thank you. Well, as they say, ministers preach the sermons they need to hear. So. Okay.
And as a Cub fan, hope springs eternal. 108 years, we made it.
Well, in faith, we look for faith because that tells us that in spite of other voices, that there is another truth.
Right. Yeah.
That's why we need each other. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's very affirming. All right. All right. These things away.
I remember forgetting to make sure she had it on.
Check.
Yeah, we're gonna keep, we're still streaming.
She's fine. She's definitely on the
I can
outside.
come down there, I can look at chat.
She'll be okay. Yeah, I hope the other 10 can say the same thing.
She's feeling better.
Oh, much better. Yeah, much better.
That's feeling better.
Today,
Dennis is feeling better, so the hope is now, Dennis Garland is feeling better, so the hope is that everybody will now get better.
yeah, I know Gates initially, because he called Lori right away, and he
feel comfortable. Well, and that's the thing, I can say, as far as I know. Yeah, great, great. I don't know, I mean, anytime I test, that happens, right, and that's how it felt. But she accident doesn't. It's from, see, and I haven't had any time I've ever fought.
She had 3 days, I had one. The first meeting in line was Tuesday night, Wednesday day. Then the symptoms changed for her. She didn't maybe breathing a lot. So that's what she suffered some complications. So that's what she was. She did her best, it was negative, went to walking clinic. That's it.
It's a weird disease.
I assume there's nobody downstairs.
I don't think much anymore. We'll go ahead and get started here.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. And Alice was going to be here, but unfortunately she cannot. So I am going to very briefly just tell you that the board made a decision to go with or to look at part-time ministry, interim ministry for the next year. And there are some reasons behind that. That doesn't mean that it can't change, but that was the decision that the board came up with during their discussion. And I understand that John was going to present part of the budget piece of that. It's really for next meeting that we will discuss the budget, but Barb instead has the figures that go along with that decision making, and she's going to bring you up to date also on the interim search and where that stands.
Good morning. How's this? Better? Okay. Just really briefly on how the search process works. In March and April, there were a team of three, me, Ann Harrington, and Darcy Anderson, and we updated our congregational information that's presented online, then, and any candidates can look at that and see if they're interested in our congregation. The first that could be posted was April 6th, which we did, and we posted for a full-time 1-year interim with an option to renew. The second part of the process is if we get any candidates, we have interview, and that's me, Kathy Bowman, and Mike Wilcox agreed to do that part. So meanwhile, our pledge drive ended, and the results were impressive. You all know that we are getting back on our feet again post-COVID. But even though we do have good results with that, the board determined, as Ann said, that we would go for part-time, and what we are asking for is half-time minister. We worked with Christine Purcell, who's a transitions team manager. She's based in Connecticut. And we changed our online profile to half-time. That appears online now, right at the moment, and I know Patrick knows more about this. The ministers met, they've looked at our profile, and they are considering now whether they would like to put their names forth as a candidate. We will get some initial results on that. The day for that is tomorrow, May 1st. So the committee will be interested in looking to see what we have, and then it would be reviewing resumes and interviewing people, checking. So what we'll have, it's called a contract minister if you're part-time, and Patrick is a contract minister, and with interim training. Just really briefly about how we came up with the amounts that that would be expected by UUA. We have between 101 and 104 members right now, and about 40 friends. That puts us in size A for congregations, which is up to 140 members, and we're in Geo Index 2. The Quad Cities is a really affordable place to live, and that is in our favor. Davenport is 6% below the national average for living expenses. So with Geo Index 2 and the size A, the medium salary would be $63,500 a year for full-time, plus the benefits that are offered. Half-time then would be $31,750, plus the benefits, and that comes up to about roughly $42,454 a year. Does that make sense to people? And if you have a question, just let me know. Okay.
Let me fill in a few gaps, hopefully, or create context. When I came on this last year at 3/4 time commuting, the congregation's size was listed as much higher than we now know the congregation size is, at around 101 or 105 plus 40 friends or so. So that means that what you're paying for ministry has gone down. So that's good for you in that sense. I've encouraged the congregation to apply for full-time on-site ministry because I think that's ultimately what you need and desire. But with the pledge drive coming up, as generous as you all have been, and let me say very, very clearly, you all have worked like crazy and have done amazing work as a congregation with the pledging you all have done has been way above and beyond what most people would expect. So you've done extraordinarily well. But for your size, that also means that you're still falling short of what's necessary to provide full-time ministry with the other staff positions you have and need to have to meet your mission as a congregation. So that means then the board is looking at this half-time option. And anything below full-time for the UUA is considered contract ministry. Now, contract ministry has some real advantages in some ways in that you can structure that pretty much any way you want it. It's not locked into any one thing, so that you and whoever you contract with have the opportunity to really custom make how you want what this is going to be. And I think what you all are looking for is someone who can come in and help you all complete doing the transition work that you want to do. And then the other opportunity with contract ministry, as opposed to standard interim ministry or other types, is that you actually have the opportunity to continue with that person beyond that. In traditional interim ministry, the minister is not allowed to then consider staying with you. And in my contract, that's written in that way intentionally. It's what we call pre-fired, so that we have the opportunity to then maybe do some really hard work, and we're not looking at trying to curry favor to get a job later on, so that we're actually doing the work. So there's some opportunities there, and I think that's one of the things the board is looking at, is the possibility of someone coming in who might be able to help you finish doing transition work, but then if that relationship works out, may be able to stay a longer term. That's part of the attraction. The other option is that if for some reason you don't get the interest or you don't find candidates that you're interested in for that, then I am willing to talk about staying half-time for another year in a similar situation to what I've been doing this year of commuting in. It would be slightly fewer hours because I'm currently at 3/4 time, and this would be half-time. And so that's also a possibility. So even if you don't get something, there's still the possibility of me being available and talking with you all about what we might be able to work out a couple of Sundays a month and all sorts of other types of things, and working with the leadership and such like that. So there's hope for other types of things coming up. So that's where I think we're at. Hopefully we'll have a better idea of what's going on sometime by mid-May. And hopefully by the annual meeting on May 21st, we'll have a bead on whether you've got a candidate for this contract ministry, or whether it might be me, or exactly where things might be at. So hopefully by that time, we'll have a better bead on things. So is that fit? Anything else anybody else might have a question about? So let me just say, the work you've done on your pledge drive was monumental. It was fantastic. Okay? It's nothing to be unhappy about. It's just ultimately in total dollars not going to reach the level you need. You needed somewhere over $220,000, $240,000 to really have the full-time ministry that you were looking for. And you're going to get somewhere probably about $50,000 or $60,000 short of that. Based on the numbers I have seen so far. And don't quote me on those numbers. They're not hard and fast at this point. But but you all have done really amazing work. And the people who led your drive this year did great work too. And so you all should be very, very proud of everything you have done as a congregation. Your leadership have worked like dogs this year, okay? And you want to treat them well. And you've got great people stepping up to take on leadership roles this year. You've got a full slate of people coming into your annual meeting. That's a very big thing because, some years you don't have people on your slates. That happens in churches. So you all are doing really well. People are stepping up, and just keep doing that, and you all will have things will continue to go really, really well. So the leadership in the UUA who are watching you are very impressed with what the congregation is doing. They gave the congregation's leaders a whole list of things to do, and they've done them, and are continuing to do them. So you all should be very proud of yourselves, and of your leadership and continuing to go forward. So I just want to say that without any kind of false bravado, y'all are working hard and it shows, and people are paying attention.
I just have a couple reminders. So we will be having town halls May 7th and May 14th, when the budget information will be presented in more depth. You'll want to be sure to try to join us for that. Also, the annual meeting will be the 21st. I will begin to send out information online. You saw something about absentee ballots, because we will not be having the election runner program. So be watching the newsletter and the website for further information, because I will probably tomorrow get the annual meeting agenda sent out. So if you know you're not going to be here for the annual meeting, you need to be sure to get your absentee ballot requests to the office, and she will forward them to me. Any other questions?
The annual meeting, you're basically going to be voting on your budget. You're going to be voting on your slate of officers. I'm sorry? The Covenant of Right Relations that the Healthy Congregations team put together. You'll be voting on that, so the congregation invests in that as an institution. And I'm not sure if we have any bylaws or policy changes. We have some bylaws and policy changes we are working on. They will probably be brought to a fall meeting for consideration at that time. And they're not any big deals. It's really trying to straighten out how we understand membership is defined and clean that up, because it's really kind of confusing right now, frankly, and to make that easier to deal with. So I think that's really kind of where we're at. So it should be a fairly straightforward meeting, not terribly complicated in that sense. And we're trying to get annual reports out to everybody and have made those available so you have an idea of what's going on. And yeah, guess what I'm doing. And so those should be available. And so it shouldn't be terribly complicated and pretty straightforward. And the meetings we're having is so people can process all this stuff in advance of the meeting, so we're not trying to do that during the meeting itself. So anything else? Okay. Thank you all very much, everybody. We appreciate your being here. The brave, the strong, the true, and the few, the proud, the chosen, as they say. And pay attention to what's going on this week. Hopefully, this will be a bump in the road. We'll be back to a more normal situation next week, hopefully. And but pay attention, and we'll keep you posted as things evolve. And thanks again so much. And thanks to our sound crew and everybody who filled in at the last minute.